Hey, 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 it's time for Cross Street again. We're going to spend some time today talking about God's power. Not like superpowers, but the power of our God who created everything. Let's get started by doing our values. You know them, so do them with me. Here we go. Number 1, love God. Number 2, love others. Number 3, do your best. And number 4, you know it, have fun. Great work. Here comes your lesson.
Hello everybody, my name is Christy and I'm joined today with my good friends Abby and Ezra. Thanks for being here today, guys.
Hi.
Alright, so I have a question for you two. Have you ever had to follow directions on a map or maybe instructions on how to do something?
Of course, we have to do that all the time at school.
Yeah, even with stuff like board games, there are instructions on how to correctly play it.
Exactly. And you know, if you really stop to think about it, we have to follow instructions or directions for a bunch of stuff every day.
Yeah, and there are so many instructions.
And sometimes I just want to do it my own way.
Yeah, it can be a test in patience for sure. But if we decide to ignore directions or take shortcuts or just go our own way and do our own thing, things can get pretty bad really fast. And the results may not be anywhere close to what we wanted or expected. So let's check out 1 Samuel chapters 4 through 6. It's a story about the travels of the ark and how God's people tried to do things their own way.
Hey guys, I'm Kristen.
I'm Tristan.
I'm Lucy.
And we're here to do Bible Story Challenge! That's where we take a mystery material and use it to tell our Bible story. So today's story is Travels of the Ark from 1 Samuel, chapters 4 through 6. You guys ready to spin the wheel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Goodness.
Oh, we got candy! Okay, I guess we'll go get our materials and we'll be right back. Okay guys, we're back and we've got all of our stuff here to tell our story. It looks so delicious. What are you guys most excited to eat?
Jelly beans. The lollipops.
It all looks really good. Well, we're going to tell our story and it's going to be a lot of fun. So here we go. The story of Travels of the Ark from 1 Samuel chapters 4 through 6, told through the use of candy. Now, God's people, the Israelites, were battling with a neighboring group of people called the Philistines, who loved to give the Israelites trouble. And they had just had a battle where 4,000 Israelite soldiers had died and the Philistines had totally won. And the Israelites were totally freaking out. Perfect. So they decided to talk to each other. And they said, what can we do to make this go better? And they had an idea. They decided that they were going to send for the Ark of the Covenant to come and go with them into battle. Now, the Ark of the Covenant was a very special box that God had instructed his people to make that was a symbol of his presence, and it was to be treated very, very specially, more specially really than going into battle. But they sent for it, and here it was at the Israelite camp, and when they all saw it, they cheered, and the Philistines all heard them. We'll move some of these soldiers out of the way. They heard them, and they wondered what was going on. And then they heard that the Ark of the Covenant was here, and it made them totally freak out. They were totally freaking out because they knew how powerful God was, and they felt like if the Ark of the Covenant was there, they were so sure they were going to lose. They said, let's fight harder than we've ever fought before. And so they went into battle, and they battled, and they battled, and the Israelites totally lost. There was even more soldiers lost than before. And not only that, the Ark of the Covenant got taken by the Philistines. Super bad news. That was super, super terrible for the Israelites. So the Philistines, they took the Ark of the Covenant. All right, let's see if you can bring it back over this way. To a temple. And in that temple, there was a big idol statue thing there to the Philistine god Dagon. And the Philistines brought it there. They were so happy. And then they all went to sleep for the night. The next morning, when they went in to see the temple, their big giant statue was knocked over flat. There we go. He's all flat and he was bowing down. It looked like he was bowing down to the ark. So the Philistines were totally freaking out. But they decided they would set the statue back up again, and then they would go to sleep that night again. But then when they came in the next day, they saw not only was the statue all the way knocked over, but the head was off and the hands were off too. Put way far away from where they were. And the Philistines were totally freaking out. Then they all started to get this terrible sickness. It was awful. They were getting sick and they were dying and it was really, really bad. And so they thought, we better do something. And they decided to move the Ark of the Covenant out of that town. And they moved it to a different Philistine town. So let's pretend this is a different Philistine town here. So they moved it to another Philistine town, and all the people there got sick. And they were totally freaking out. And they decided they'd better move it to a different Philistine town. So let's pretend this is another Philistine town. And all the people there got sick too. And they were totally freaking out. And then the Philistines got together. They said, we've got to do something about this. They started talking to each other. They realized they needed to just send the Ark of the Covenant back to the Israelites. That was the only way that they were going to be free of all of this craziness. So they sent the Ark of the Covenant back to the Israelites. And that is our story of Travels of the Ark from 1 Samuel chapters 4 through 6, told through the use of candy. We've had so much fun getting to tell our Bible story today, and we just wanted to say thanks for watching. Oh yeah, looks very good.
Okay, let's review what's happening with God's people. God had sent judges and prophets to help his people, the Israelites. If you remember a couple weeks ago, we learned about a judge named Deborah. Well, one of the prophets was named Samuel, and Samuel was raised by Eli, a priest. We learned about Samuel last week. Samuel's mother is Hannah. When the Israelites were defeated in battle against the Philistines, Eli's sons decided to take matters into their own hands to make sure that the Israelites would win the next battle. The Israelites took the Ark of the Covenant into battle. The Israelites thought that if they took it into battle with them, that they would surely win the battle. They were taking a shortcut and going into battle their own way, not God's. Now, we don't talk about the Ark of the Covenant all that much, and we don't have one of our own. We don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is today. So, what is it? Years before today's lesson takes place, God had commanded Moses to build a large box out of acacia wood and to cover it in gold. Yes, real gold. Inside the box were the stone tablets the 10 Commandments were written on. Moses' staff was in there, and there was a jar of manna. If you remember, manna is what God provided for the Israelites in the desert as their food. It was kind of like bread that formed out of the water on the ground in the morning. The ark symbolized God's presence with the people and his provision for them. It was so special that the people weren't even allowed to touch it or to look inside of it. They weren't supposed to carry it into battle or take it anywhere without God's leading. But the Israelites took the ark into battle thinking it would give them God's favor and help them to win the battle. But that did not happen. In fact, not only were the Israelites defeated again, But the ark was captured by their enemies, the Philistines. The ark was taken back to Philistine territory where it was kept for 7 months before the Philistines finally returned it to the Israelites. God brought destruction upon the Philistines. Every place that they took the ark, God caused physical pain and illness to the people. When the Philistines placed the ark in the temple of their idol named Dagon, God caused Dagon to fall over and break apart. God had shown his power, and he had showed that the ark belonged to his people. The Philistines were terrified. They knew they did not want this ark in their land, so they sent it back to the Israelites. While the Ark of the Covenant was for the Israelites, they were not following God's commands. God is always with his people, but that does not mean that things turn out the way that we expect them to. The Israelites thought that just having the ark would guarantee them the victory in the battle. They were going in with their own plan rather than allowing God to lead them. And that's why God even allowed the Philistines to get the Ark of the Covenant in the first place. The Philistines and the Israelites both needed to know our big idea for today, which is this: God is all powerful. He alone is God. Let's check out this video and learn more about God's way being best.
Hello everybody and welcome back. Now we're going to talk about how every day I have to follow directions. There's a very specific kind of directions called a recipe. Have you two ever followed a recipe before?
Oh yeah, I help make dinner.
Yeah, and I like to bake with my mom.
Well, that's perfect because today we are going to be doing some of our own baking. Do you guys like chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love chocolate chip cookies, and we have all the ingredients we need right here to make them. And here, we have all the directions we need to follow in order to make our chocolatey goodness. Both of you are gonna get the chance to make your very own batch of cookies. But there's a catch. One of you is going to pick an ingredient off of our list to leave out of your batch of cookies. And the other is gonna follow the instructions very closely. And we're gonna figure out which one turns out better.
I think I'll leave out baking soda.
Oh, that'll be pretty interesting. I think baking soda is kind of important. What are you gonna use instead?
More sugar.
Oh, that'll be interesting. All right, you guys ready to get to work? You two did great. These look so yummy.
But these ones over here, they don't look very good.
Yeah, those are mine. Maybe you do need the baking soda, but the extra sugar should make them good.
I don't know. I guess we're just gonna have to try them. Here you go. We'll try some of Ezra's. Pretty good.
Yeah.
Ezra, good work. And now for Abby's cookies. This is the real test here. Ready? Big bite. So, what do you think? Kinda not what they should be, huh? Abby, why did you decide to leave out baking soda and use more sugar?
Well, sugar tastes good and baking soda doesn't.
That is true, but usually it's better to follow instructions, even if we don't like all the ingredients. Just because we want to go fast at something or take shortcuts or do things our own way doesn't mean we're gonna like what happens in the end. Just like we may really love sugar, but we may not like what a cookie tastes like if we put too much sugar in it. Sometimes I think I really know something or really understand something, but I forget I don't know what's best. It's the same thing when we're following God. Sometimes we can get too confident and think we know best or that we can do things on our own. But what we forget is that God is God and we are not. He knows best and we can trust his plan.
Just like when we follow a cookie recipe, we end up with good cookies.
You're right, Ezra. Just like when you have a good cookie recipe, you end up with a good cookie. If you trust God's way, you'll have the best way. So, do you guys think we should have another cookie?
Or two.
Yeah, as long as they're not mine.
True.
So what can we remember from this story? The Israelites took matters into their own hands to try to get God's favor in battle. They knew that they were not supposed to take the Ark of the Covenant into battle, and instead of obeying God, they disobeyed, and they had to watch the Ark be captured. They were defeated, and they lost the Ark of the Covenant. And it may have seemed to them at that point that God had abandoned them completely. But the Ark was eventually returned. We can trust that because God is all-powerful, He has a plan for all of us, just as He had a plan for the Israelites. Remember our big idea? God is all-powerful. He alone is God. When we're tempted to take shortcuts and do things our own way, we can remember God's way is always better. God showed through the destruction of the Philistines that He is the one true God, all-powerful and in control. He showed the Israelites that He is in control even when they were defeated. There is nothing more powerful than God, and He is faithful to His plan even when things don't go the way that we expect. We can trust God. This Bible story shows us how He alone is God. He is all-powerful, and He is always with us. Our memory verse today tells us that if we trust in God, He will never leave us. And speaking of memory verses, we've got a new one today. It comes from Psalm chapter 9, verses 9 and 10. I'll show you how to do it, and then I want you to do it with me once. Here we go. It's going to go like this. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name will trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. That's Psalm 9, verses 9 and 10. Let's do it together. I'll do it slowly. Here we go. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name will trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Psalm 9, verses 9 and 10. Remember that our big idea today is that God is all-powerful. He alone is God. God is so powerful that He raised Jesus from the dead. Did you know that? Jesus rose from the dead. But why did Jesus rise from the dead? Well, Jesus, 3 days before He rose from the dead, He died on the cross. And He died on the cross to pay the punishment for your sin and my sin, for the sins of the whole world. Sin is anything that we think, say, or do that displeases God. And sin, the Bible tells us, requires a punishment. But Jesus loved us so much that He wanted to pay that punishment for us, and He did when He died on the cross. And then 3 days later, God's power rose Jesus from the dead. That's incredible. That's such a gift to us that our sins are already paid for. It's a gift that we do have to accept, though. We have to acknowledge that we are sinners, believe that Jesus died on the cross and rose 3 days later, and confess that we want God to help us live a life that pleases Him instead of displeases Him. And God's going to help us do that. It's simple to invite Jesus to be your Savior. And you don't have to have any fancy words. You don't have to be at church. You don't have to even say a prayer with the pastor. You just have to pray, because the only person who knows if you really mean it is you and God. If you want to pray to accept Jesus, I'm going to pray right now a model prayer. You can follow this prayer, or you can just listen and then say your own prayer afterwards. So if you want to pray with me, let's do that right now. Dear God, thank you so much for sending your Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for my sins. On my own, I try a lot of ways to get over my sin, and I just can't do it on my own. I need you to help me, God, and I'm thankful that you sent Jesus to pay the penalty for my sins once and for all. Thank you for that gift of salvation and forgiveness. Would you help me to live a life that pleases you, a life that makes a lot of people want to know you more, and give me the courage to tell people about you. It's in your name I pray. Amen. The most important decision that you could ever make in your whole life is to accept Jesus into your heart and allow him to guide your life. If you just made that decision, or if you make that decision on your own at another time, please come tell us about it, because we want to celebrate you and we want to celebrate that decision, and we want to help you. The rest of your life, you're going to spend time getting to know God, and we want to help you get started in that journey, as well as help you to tell other people about this decision. So if you decide to place your trust in Jesus, let us know so we can celebrate and help you along the way. Until next week, see you, friends.